Hello, and welcome back to Guidance in Recovery, your sobriety journey podcast with your host, Keegan. Do you ever wonder if your stomach controls your brain? Well, our guest today is a literal pioneer who has spent over 2 decades reshaping how the world understands and treats eating disorders. Jessica Setnick is a registered dietitian and the author of the industry standard Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Pocket Guide to Eating Disorders. I hope I said that right.
You're
She is the
perfect.
founder of she is the founder of the International Federation of Eating Disorder Dietitians and the creator of the world-renowned Eating Disorders Boot Camp. But beyond the credentials, she is an anthropologist of the human soul who looks past the symptoms to find the underlying inner eater that we all carry. She's here to help us dismantle all things we think about food and how our brains work with the food. So, Jessica, first up, what myth are you wanting to bust today?
Oh my gosh. The idea that eating disorders have a look, just
Ooh,
the same as the idea that addictions have a look, that an addict has a look, right? I'm
okay.
here to bust that anorexia has a look or bulimia has a look. I
Hmm.
believe that everyone who eats can have an eating problem and I will die on that hill.
Well, I think that's a great hill to die on of sorts
I mean, I'm
because I
not
mean,
looking to die, but if I had to,
yeah, yeah, that's
turn of phrase. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean that's kind of the thing though, you know. Whenever we think of addictions or disorders, there's this stereotype that kind of goes along with it, and a lot of us don't fit into that. And whenever we don't fit that stereotype, it's like, is there really something wrong with me? I'm not like that, so I'm like, there's something else wrong or
Yes.
something, you know?
There's even a fantastic book in the field called Sick Enough, and it's all about are you if you don't think you're sick enough to have an eating disorder,
Huh? Okay.
because it was such a pervasive myth in our field.
Yeah. Okay. So whenever we look at this eating order and how you've come about creating this whole new boot camp of sorts, could you give us a little bit of your backstory? Like what got you into figuring this out for yourself and others?
Sure. So you mentioned I have an anthropology background. You said I'm an anthropologist of the human soul, which I was like, wow, no one has ever said that before, but it totally resonated. I started out in college having no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I just had always thought, oh, I'm supposed to go to college, so here I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started taking the classes. They're sort of required classes in different fields. And all the required classes I ended up taking were in anthropology. And
Huh.
if anyone listening doesn't know what anthropology is, don't stress because I didn't know what anthropology was until I started realizing how much I liked it. It's just a study of human development. It's a study of people.
Uh-huh.
Archaeology is one facet of anthropology. That's the things humans leave behind. There's
Mm-hmm.
also linguistics, which is the way humans develop language and use language. So it was really all about how humans develop culture, how humans develop physically, all of these different facets. And I loved it so much. It was so interesting to me. And then I took nutrition as an elective because my friend told me it was an easy A. Shout out to Casey McLaughlin. She was wrong. It was not an easy A. And I fell in love with it. It was
Uh-huh.
so good. I just love the idea of like what happens when food goes inside your body. The idea that this whole process is happening all day, every day for us humans, and we don't have to control it or even know about it or be aware of it. It's so weird, right? And
Uh-huh.
so these two things kind of came together for me, and it was like the nutrition felt like micro anthropology. Like if anthropology is about how the human species developed or how different cultures developed,
Mm-hmm.
nutrition was about how your own internal experience developed, why you
Hmm.
feel the way you feel about eating, what you even think of as food versus not food. Like is a grasshopper food? That's the example I always give because some people would say yes, some people would say no, right? We all
Uh-huh.
have all this, for lack of a better word, I'll just say baggage related to eating that we're not even aware of. The same way we're not aware of what's going on in our digestive system, we're also not aware of what's going on in our brain related to food. And
Uh-huh.
so this just fascinated me. At first, I thought I wanted to be a sports dietitian, but what happened is when I was in school getting my degree in sports nutrition, so this is my second degree,
Uh-huh.
I realized that even though I think all that stuff I said about how you think about food, how you feel about food, how you feel before you eat, after you eat, the choices you make, how social constructs affect your eating, all of that I thought belongs in all areas of nutrition. But when I was going through school, this was in 1994. I'm older than I look. So back then, the only part of nutrition where you were really like allowed to talk about this stuff was in eating disorders. So
Oh.
I gravitated toward the eating disorder field, not realizing I had had my own eating disorder. I
Huh.
gravitated toward that area because that's where the dietitian was allowed to talk about the psychology of eating and really delve into it with patients. And so
Huh.
that's the part I loved. So that's how I well, that's not how I got here to this day, but that's sort of
Uh-huh.
my origin story as an eating disorder specialist dietitian.
Okay. Well, thank you for that background. And I mean, you have brought up some really good points because I mean, whenever I think about what is food and what isn't food, it's like basically food nowadays comes in a package. And it's kind of weird, right? But I also know that it doesn't necessarily have to look like that. And the grasshopper example is great because like if you what is that world market I think you can go to and like they have chocolate covered grasshoppers and other things like that, but I haven't ate those because to me, bugs are not food. But it some people like around the world, they're more of a delicacy almost, right?
Yeah,
And
maybe.
so whenever I think of eating disorders, the first thing that comes to my head is calories. You know, it's like how many calories am I ingesting? Is it too much?
Yeah.
Is that the proper standard? And so my question real quick is what do calories actually have to do with the way that we interact with food?
That is not where I thought you were going with that question. Okay. Calories is like inches. Calories is
Uh-huh.
a way of measuring.
Mhm.
So you could say, I'm, well, I was just told I'm shrunk now to 5'1". So I'm 61 inches tall. So an
Okay.
inch is, it doesn't exist. It's just a way of measuring.
Okay.
So if I held up an apple and said, this provides 80 calories, you can't find them if you looked under a microscope. It's just a way of measuring how much energy your body would make after you ate that apple. But that
Mm.
is a gross overgeneralization of how calories work. That's sort of the definition of calories
Uh-huh.
is how much energy your body can make when you eat it, but everyone's body's so different and every apple is so different that there is no standard, but that is what a calorie is. It's a unit of measurement just like an inch. It's not a thing,
Mhm.
you cannot see it. It's a way of measuring.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, in a sense, because I mean, you also just open up another question that I was about to say or think of because if calories, from my scientific understanding, it's like how much energy it takes to change 1 cc of water up 1 degree of
Oh, you
Celsius.
did some research.
No.
Yeah, that's right. Technically, it's actually, yes, it's, yes. Yes, you're describing a kilocalorie. We
Okay.
abbreviate that KCAL,
Uh-huh.
and usually only dietitians write it that way. Usually
Mhm.
nobody thinks of it that way. So I explained to you sort of what humans who are not
Uh-huh.
dietitians would say. But yes, if you were a dietitian, you could say, yes, a kilocalorie is the amount of heat that it would take to raise 1 milliliter of water 1 degree.
Okay.
But
And
nobody cares about that. That's like saying, what is an inch? An inch is, I don't know, how did an inch originate? I really don't know. Is it King Henry's like distance between his thumb and his first knuckle or something? Nobody cares about that. We've left that behind.
uh-huh.
But yes, you are correct in that it is a
Mhm.
measure of heat. Yes.
Okay. So, but whenever you said that it's kind of like not everyone's body is the same, not every apple is the same, does that really imply that the same food would not interact with each person the same way because their body is going to create a different amount of energy with whichever item they choose to eat, right?
Yes, and we haven't even discussed that some people eat all the way up to the core. Some people eat the
Mm.
whole core. Some people leave over only the stem, right? Some people
Yeah.
peel the apple before they eat it. Like there's
Uh-huh.
so many factors that yes, it's going to be different for every single person, not just in what their body does when they eat the apple, but how the apple even got to them, what they do to the apple once they have it. Did they already preheat it in the oven and make a baked apple with some cinnamon and stuff, right? It's like there's so many factors and we humans just really want things to have a definite answer. Believe
Mhm.
me, I am this person I am describing. We want there to be one answer, and that is not how it works in nutrition.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, whenever we think about eating disorders, though, you kind of said like some people eat the whole apple, some people peel the apple. And so the first thing that I think of eating disorders is either eating way too much, not eating at all, or throwing it back up after eating. Those are the three that I think of. Is
Yeah.
that right to say that those are the disorders, or
Oh my goodness. You are ahead of your time. You are so smart. Those are not the disorders.
okay?
Those are symptoms of the
Hmm.
disorders.
Oh,
So we don't actually know what the disorder of an eating disorder is. We can't point to the broken body part. It's just like an addiction. You can't
yeah.
say the problem is in my lungs. The problem
Mm-hmm.
is I have a broken bone. It
Mm-hmm.
is, we don't know, is it hormonal? Is it neurotransmitters? What exactly is it trauma related? And and
Mm-hmm.
and I have developed a whole model based on it's different for every person and I've broken it into 4 categories which I'm happy to share with you. But
Okay.
to me, the eating disorder is a question mark. In other
Mm.
words, I prefer not to use the term eating disorders actually because eating disorders, remember anthropology, how we use language, very
Uh-huh.
specific. Eating disorders are a very specific category of diagnoses that have been
Mm.
defined by humans very imperfectly. Very imperfectly is actually a kind way of saying it. It's way worse than very imperfectly. And so using eating disorders is what I feel like the way we use that terminology, we think like what you said. It's either someone emaciated who's not eating enough, someone overweight who's eating too much, someone who eats and then uses compensatory behaviors to get rid of their food. Those are
Mm-hmm.
all behaviors, but guess what? The same person can do all of those behaviors. So how can
Mm.
you put someone in a box based on the behavior? So the terminology I have tried to send out into the universe and seems to be taken off a little bit in my field is dysfunctional eating behaviors or
Ah.
disruptive eating behaviors or problem eating behaviors because that's what we see. We don't see the eating disorder. We don't know if it is a brain chemical problem and therefore could be fixed by SSRIs. We don't know if it's a hormone problem and therefore could be fixed by estrogen. We just, if it's a trauma problem and therefore it could be fixed by EMDR. We have to figure that out for each person,
Huh.
but not based on the behavior that they're doing, based on what
Oh.
caused the behavior that they're doing. And so now I have framed for you my model, my gift to the field, which is called the origins of dysfunctional eating behavior. And there are 4 categories. There's the biologically based dysfunctional eating behaviors, addiction based dysfunctional eating behaviors, stress
Uh-huh.
and trauma based dysfunctional eating behaviors, and then environmental and learned behaviors. And I'm happy to talk more about that if you want me to. But as
Yeah.
the shorter answer to your question, the behaviors are the symptom. That's what you see. The
Mm-hmm.
dysfunction is something actually internal. We don't know what it is. And so it would be wrong to name the disorders after the behavior. And yet that's what our medical community does. If you don't
Mm-hmm.
eat enough to sustain life, you have anorexia nervosa. And what happens is people get misdiagnosed all the time. So the person who is living in a bigger body and
Mm-hmm.
only eats 300 calories a day is told to eat less.
Huh.
And that doesn't make any sense because no one asked what is behind this. So
Uh-huh.
that's where I come from is let's look at each person as an individual, figure out how they got here, and then maybe we can unwind it somewhat. And that's the
Huh.
model that I created.
Oh wow. Well, whew. Yeah, you totally just blew my brain with that because you said that the behavior is kind of like what we're treating, or
Right.
what we're looking at. And that was the same thing that came to mind whenever it's like, well, whenever was dealing with my alcoholism, that was just a symptom of what was going on the
You.
inside.
Mhm.
So that's super interesting. And I mean, how did you start to figure out that that was more the case? Was it because you're like humans are humans and they don't necessarily know what is going on inside?
That's part of it.
Okay.
Part of it was sitting across from people one at a time and
Mm-hmm.
hearing their origin story
Mm.
and realizing it's different for every single person, but there are some trends.
Okay.
And the thing that sort of made me jump into this origins model that I continue to refine is that in 2013, the okay, so I don't know how familiar your listeners might be with the DSM. It stands for Diagnostic Manual of Statistical and Mental Disorders. And it's
Mm-hmm.
basically the diagnoses that psychologists use to name the experiences that people are going through. So, alcohol
Mm-hmm.
use disorder. No one except a psychologist is going to use the word alcohol use disorder, the phrase.
Yep.
But those are the things that it defines. And so prior to 2013, the only two eating disorders that were defined were anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa. In
Mm.
2013, a new version of diagnoses came out and added a few things, and then also added a severity criteria. And
Huh.
so if you and I were going to say what would make something like anorexia severe, like what would we want the severity criteria to be? And this,
Uh-huh.
I actually went and gave a presentation and was just writing on the board, and everyone just shouted it out. It was like, if you have heart complications, if you're throwing up blood, if you have osteoporosis, the longer you've had it, the
Mm-hmm.
the younger you are when it starts. Like these are all things that might be severity. If you're homeless and have no
Mm-hmm.
support, right? These are all things that might sort of impact the severity of your anorexia. Well, guess what the DSM chose for the severity criteria? Your
Uh,
BMI
oh, I was about to say weight, but close.
only.
Huh.
Worse than weight, BMI.
Yeah. Okay.
Bullshit, meaningless information. That is my definition of the acronym. So, and
Uh-huh.
for bulimia nervosa, I would say many of the same things I would think would be the severity criteria, but the APA picked how many times per week on average you use a compensatory behavior. Now, let me
Mm.
tell you, I've met a lot of people with bulimia and I've been one. Not one of those people could tell you how many times a week on average for the past 3 months they have thrown up.
Oh, yeah, that
Nobody counts?
no. Uh-uh. Yeah. That'd be like asking an alcoholic how many drinks do you have a day? It's like, how long have I been awake?
Until I black out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And so I was so infuriated by how distant this official Bible of mental disorders was from how people actually exist in life,
Mm-hmm.
and how helping professionals, treaters actually address people or talk to people, work with people, that I gave a whole presentation on it. And that was that sort of rage of righteous indignation was how I came up with this. What should we be using
Uh-huh.
instead? It was sort of like when someone says, "What do you want to eat?" And you say, "I don't know." And they say, "What about Chinese food?" And you're like, "But I know I don't want that." Right?
Uh-huh.
It's like,
Yeah.
I couldn't have told you how I thought we should be doing things until someone did it totally wrong. And then I was like, "But that's not the way." And so I then came up with what I thought would be much better. And P.S. There is a P.S. to my superhero story, origin story,
Uh-huh.
or supervillain, depending on your point of view, which is that in 2023,
Mm-hmm.
those severity criteria that I was mad about in 2013, that were so bad that nobody in the field actually used them, so it didn't matter because nobody cared. In
Mm-hmm.
2023, they became mandatory.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden, people were not able to get insurance coverage because of
Huh.
how many times they threw up a week for the average of 3 months or whatever. It just, they didn't meet criteria anymore. And so I actually put together, within 48 hours, I put together a proposal, excuse me, with 2,000 signatures. I did the whole appropriate thing. And 18 months later, which was this year, I got an email that the APA issued a correction.
Whoa.
Yes. And they changed those severity criteria to, at the discretion of the treating professional,
Uh-huh.
based on how much it's impairing your life and how
Okay.
many medical complications you have.
Ooh. Ooh.
So a little grassrootsy advocacy actually paid off this time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, it sounds much more comprehensive and actually understanding of the person and not treating them like a number.
Yes, not trying to stuff them in a box. Oh, you don't eat
Uh-huh.
enough? You go in this box. Oh, you're overweight? You go in this box. And the
Mm-hmm.
best example I can give you is a little one act play about Goldilocks and the three bears. And
Okay.
let's say Goldilocks sees the three bears and they're all coughing. And so she's so sweet. She gives them each a cough drop. And Papa Bear stops coughing and says, "Wow, I feel so much better. Thank you." And Mama
Mm-hmm.
Bear just keeps coughing, no change at all. And
Mm-hmm.
Baby Bear takes a cough drop, turns blue, and passes out. And now they have to call an ambulance, 911, whatever, EMTs. Well,
Uh-huh.
why? They were all coughing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she did not assess why they were coughing. So Papa
Mm.
Bear's coughing because he has a sore throat. The end. Cough drop solved it. Mama bear, she has tuberculosis. A cough drop's not going to do jack.
Yeah.
And baby bear, he's already choking on a chicken wing. So you give him a cough drop and now you've completely blocked his airway and he codes, right?
Oh.
If you just look at the outside behavior, you're not eating enough, you're not eating enough, you're not eating enough. You give everybody the same treatment. You
Mm-hmm.
don't know which person is not eating enough because they've had a traumatic event and they're in shock. Which person's not eating enough because they grew up in a household where they were shamed every time they ate, right? You don't know what the root problem is. So you're not solving the root problem. You're only either pacifying the symptom for a little while or doing nothing. Or
Mm.
worse, you are causing more harm because you are basically replicating the same thing that caused the problem.
Oh. Oh man, that's I bet some people do not like hearing that last part.
I
'Cause-
mean, I think that what is so toxic in any field is the people who think they know it all.
oh
And
yeah.
so anyone who can't hear just because we've always done it this way, that must mean it's the best? No. Why can't you say we did the best we could? Maya Angelou, we did the best we could with what we knew, and now we know more, and now we do better. People who can't change, I think, are a problem. And I heard this saying, oh my gosh, it's really weird.
Okay.
The field advances with every death.
Yeah.
When someone told me that, I was like, wait, what? Are you talking about patients dying? This is so morbid. She said, no, it's the people at the top of the food chain. You're nodding. It
Mm-hmm.
sounds like you've heard this before. Like in
Mm-hmm.
academia, the people at the top, when new stuff comes along, they may not want to accept it. They may not mentor people who have different ideas, etc. And so those new ideas don't come out until someone dies and stops the gatekeeping.
Yeah. And I mean that it kind of goes along the same lines of like government. And I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard that same set of words from a job that I went to. It's like, well, why do we do stuff this way? It's just how we've always done it. Like, but we can do it a little bit better. Or like, what about this? And real quick, I do want to throw out your website because you brought up the Goldilocks. And so it's foodfairytales.com, right?
That's one of them. Yes.
Okay.
That's funny.
um,
Yes.
yeah, and I mean, so it's so interesting because I've also heard something similar in regards to like recovery. And whenever I was in rehab, there was someone that said, for some to live, some must die. And I was like, oof, that's really rough. But at first I thought it was total bullshit. But the longer I've been in recovery and all that, the more I come to find out that it's actually very true because some people don't have a rock bottom. Some people do have a rock bottom. Some people have to witness those around them go through terrible things or suffer the worst and to have their mind or perspective shifted, and that's how I see that kind of going too, is that some of the people that say no, it's done this way, they have to die off so that someone else can take their spot and say no, but let's try stuff a little bit different because we've learned more information you
Well,
know
and what I hear when I hear you say that is if we have that tragic event where someone dies, what are we learning from it? In other words, we
mhm
can't control it. We're not saying we hope someone dies so we can learn something. But
mhm
if someone dies, let's not make it be a waste. Let's advance
yep
the field. Let's move forward because of that. And
yeah
I do feel like I've tried to kind of change the language in our field to a turning point rather than
uh-huh
rock bottom. But
yeah
one of the examples I give of a turning point is if someone you were in treatment with in the past dies, that could be a turning point. It's not
yeah
for everybody, but it can
mm
be.
yeah. So, I mean, how do you help people figure out their origin story? Because a lot of people would like to think that, oh, I've lived my life. I know why I do everything that I do, right?
Yeah. No, none of us do. So I'm thinking of a drawing of an iceberg, like if you picture an iceberg like with a penguin on the top. I used to think the tip of the iceberg was where the penguin is standing, like that's the
Uh-huh.
tip, right? And then you see this iceberg floating in the water, and I would think, why did the Titanic not just veer around it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. Well, what I didn't know is that this whole triangle is the tip. And the
Uh-huh.
iceberg is actually this big continent under the water, and no
Mm.
one can just veer around it. That's how I think of us. What we
Mm.
think we bring to the table, to our therapist, to our dietitian, to our self help, is this. and there's this
Mm.
whole continent underneath of stuff. And until you start looking into that unconscious stuff, that historical stuff, you don't know. Sometimes you might start chipping away and you're like, I know what's in there. It's just ice and trauma. And then you're like, wait, there's a bicycle in there. You're like, what does this have to do with anything? That's sort of the image I have in my mind of what you're
Uh-huh.
talking about. And so what I do since I don't see patients anymore, I now teach a workshop called Healing Your Inner Eater.
Mm.
And the goal is not even to delve into your own subconscious on purpose. Like, I'm not sure how you would do that, like hypnosis or something. No, it's to actually look at the lives of the people who raised you and the people
Mm.
who raised them. So, even if it might be parents, grandparents, foster parents, it might be siblings, it
Mm-hmm.
might be an orphanage. Like, there's so many different ways that people can be raised, right?
Yeah.
We look at those people's life experience and then the life experience of the people that raised them. And that's how we're able to start seeing the things that we are not consciously aware of. So, just to
Mm.
give you an example, when we do this exercise in the workshop, we ask people to draw themselves in the middle and then draw the people who were important to them growing up, like your first like 6 to 10 years. No more than
Mm-hmm.
that. But those people, you can do more if you more, later, but we start
Uh-huh.
with those early experiences. And then write the names of the people who were important to you, and then write a few things that you know about their life, not even necessarily about their eating, about their life. And amazing things, and people, we ask people to discuss, and amazing things come up. And here's just one example. Recently, this is a therapist now, so I was doing this for a group of professionals, and she said one of the things she realized during this exercise is her parents grew up impoverished. They
Mm-hmm.
probably didn't have enough food. They definitely didn't have enough food to buy whatever they wanted. And then her dad, I believe, became some kind, well, let's just say financially well off. I don't even need to say what the profession was.
Okay.
And this was in the 80s. And so, depending on how old you are, you may or may not remember that the height of coolness at school lunch in the 80s was Lunchables,
Oh.
right? The little individual, right? The little
Yeah.
bento box of, yeah, crackers and round shaped meat and cheese. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So she said that every single day she took a Lunchable to lunch and that she did not learn to boil an egg, steam broccoli, cook a chicken breast until she was in college and one of her roommates taught her. She was
Huh.
never taught how to actually make food because her parents were so sort of overjoyed that they had reached this financial status where they could give her packaged processed food for lunch every day. And
Mm.
so that's the kind of thing we're talking about. The messages you received about food and eating before you even knew you were getting messages about food and eating.
Huh.
That's what's in the iceberg.
Ooh, okay. And looking at the people that were around us in those early years and stuff, I love that because, I mean, in looking at the way the people who raised them as well, because I have a life example that I went through recently where I had said something to the wife and I had apologized and stuff, and she was like, "Why are you doing this kind of thing?" And it's because I had that victim mindset. And so she brought it up, and I was kind of at first I was a little bit peeved. I was like, "What do you mean? Like I'm not having this victim mindset?" And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, "Wait." So my mother kind of has that victim mindset, and then I was like, "But why does my mother have that?" Because my grandmother, she was alienated from her siblings, and she was the black sheep of sorts, and so it just got transferred to my mother and then to me, and I didn't even realize I was doing some of the stuff. And so it's the intergenerational trauma of sorts.
Yes, exactly. Like we could
Huh.
just end right now. You got it.
But we don't need to end right there because it's like one of the things that I also think of is like if say people in the panhandle or whatever lived through the Dust Bowl, their grandparents were going to have to do something different, you
I
know?
cannot even believe you said that because that is another example I sometimes share from one of a different Healing Your Inner Eater workshop where
Huh.
when we did this same exercise, someone described growing up in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl, there was not enough food for everyone, and her family would invite over the minister after church on Sunday. And
Huh.
the minister was allowed to eat. They never wanted to tell the minister they didn't have enough. So the minister just ate. The kids had to sit and watch. And only after the
Mm.
minister and all the adults had eaten, if there was anything less, the kids could eat it. And so this person is recalling this in this small group, And then she realizes when she was a kid, she used to see her when she was a kid. This was the grandmother's family
Uh-huh.
that
Okay.
was a child at this time of the Dust Bowl. When
Uh-huh.
she was a kid, her grandmother, now a grandmother, would cry at family meals. And she would say to her grandpa, "Why is grandma crying?" And he would always say, "She's crying happy tears." And she pieced
Mm.
this together and she said, "I realize now the idea that she could sit around a table with her grandchildren and there was enough for everyone to eat
Mm.
was so emotional for her."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Yeah.
we are all descended from someone somewhere that either went through a refugee situation, the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, wartime situation, rationing from wartime. There's
Mm-hmm.
all it just general food insecurity, financial insecurity. We're all descended from people who've had those experiences. And so if you were ever told to clean your plate when you were little because there are children starving and fill in the blank,
Uh-huh.
first of all, we didn't have to look to that country. There were children hungry across the street if we looked. We
Mm-hmm.
just didn't know it. But in addition, it was our parents were not trying to screw us up or our caregivers. They were
Uh-huh.
trying to teach us something with love. Like you eat what
Mm.
you have now because there might not be something later. But they taught us these scarcity mindsets when we might not have been in a scarcity situation. So we're carrying the same legacy. And one of the main messages I try to send is, can you honor and respect the experiences that your ancestors had without having to continue on the same legacy? Can you, in other words,
Mm.
say thank you for everything you did? And I can personally share that one of my sort of confusions about my iceberg was, why
Uh-huh.
would I feel sad at a happy time? And sometimes I realize it's because I felt guilty that I don't have a life where I had to sacrifice like my grandparents did. And I had
Mm.
to realize, therapy, going to visit where my grandparents came from in Europe, all these different things. I had to get to the place where I realized they made those sacrifices so that I could have different choices. I
Mm.
shouldn't feel guilty. I should feel grateful. I am the embodiment of the reason that they made those choices and they made those sacrifices, and they're celebrating with me. I could cry
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it. But the idea that I should be miserable because they were miserable is
Mm-hmm.
not the legacy that I want to give to them. It's me being happy to say it was so worthwhile what you went through because look what you were able to create for me. But
Mm.
it's very confusing in our brains. We sometimes think that if we change things, if we do things differently, then we're somehow disinheriting them or something. And
Mm.
but doing something differently is simply because you have a different situation, not because you're saying they did it wrong. They needed
Mm-hmm.
to do what they did in their situation. It's so complex.
Yeah. Oof, that is really complex. And for some reason, the first thing that pops in my head is like the person that plants a tree knowing that they won't have the fruits of it.
Yes, yes, yes,
So,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, you can't be guilty like, oh, this tree is here giving me fruit that my great grandparents planted and they can't have it. I mean, but there's different ways that you could work around that too. But
Mhm.
you'd have to kind of, I guess, like you said, figure out your iceberg and figure out
Right.
what you really is driving the situation.
Yes, you can't change it if you don't know. And that's where I think a lot of people try to change their eating behaviors and then are disappointed when they don't achieve it. And we have
Mm,
this word for it, like, I don't have enough willpower. And
yeah.
willpower is nothing compared. I mean, think about, do you have enough willpower to hold your breath? Right? There's going to be a point where you're sort of your body fights back. And it's
Yeah.
the same thing. If you think you have enough willpower to overcome your unconscious, no, your body
No.
will fight back. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up because one of the things I've learned in my healing and recovery journey is that my subconscious is my body and it's like 10 steps ahead of me. Like, no matter how much I think I'm on the right path to catching up to it, it's always 10 steps ahead. It is way better at chess than I'll ever be. And And so it's like as soon as I get a glimpse of a problem or something that I can work on, it's already working on the next thing for me to uncover and work on and heal, you know? And so like I may and that's the other thing too is that there's layers to everything else, right? So just because someone figures out a portion of the iceberg doesn't mean it's all of it, right?
That's also true. And I honestly, I get a little bit apprehensive. Like, I don't know if scared is quite the right word, but kind of
Mhm.
icked out when I think, like, what? there's stuff going on in my brain that I don't know about. And it just like, I don't like that. Who is in charge? And I just try to remind myself, well, also, you know what? My lungs are breathing and I'm not in charge of that. And it's actually a
Mm-hmm.
good thing because that would take up all my time is if I had to pay attention to every breath, right? And my heart's beating and I'm not in control of that. So I try to believe, like, okay, this other stuff, this is just like working itself out. It's okay
Mm-hmm.
to not be like consciously in control of every single thing, but it's a little bit, I don't know if scary, like I said, is quite the right word, but it feels a
Uh-huh.
little bit like too loose, too
Yeah.
loosey goosey. I want to at least know what's going on. And honestly, I
Yeah.
think that therapy, journaling, like there's a lot of things that do help you kind of access that EMDR. And I'm sure you've tried some of those things too that kind of help you access it, but not in the sense of I want to control it. It's more like, thank God it's taking care of me. I just maybe like to be like a silent partner.
Uh-huh. I mean, oh, you bring up a really good point because sometimes the things that help us survive end up being the things that are actually causing us some trauma later on and down the road.
Yes, I love that you said that because survival is okay. Now we have full circled it back to anthropology because
Okay.
the people who survive are the people who pass on their genes to us. The
Mm-hmm.
people who survive are the people who pass on their culture to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
People pleasing is a survival skill. Fitting in is a survival skill because if you think back to the time when we all lived in a tribal setting and we moved from place to place, we didn't have agriculture, we didn't have homes. If you got left behind by the tribe, you were done.
Yeah.
So you kind of had to fit in your role in the tribe to stay together. Now, I will also say I think those tribes were a lot more appreciative of the diversity of human experience, human personality, etc. And so
Yeah.
they carried along more. They did less ostracizing than we do now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
nevertheless, the goal was to not be ostracized because then you cannot survive. And
Mm-hmm.
so we learn from, let's say, a parent who says, eat everything on your plate, blah blah blah. We learn to go along to get along, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's what we need to do. And in some situations it's really bad, right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't eat everything on your plate, you're gonna get hurt
Mm-hmm.
or you're going to get locked out. Like,
Mm.
I'm not naive enough to think that everyone has this happy childhood where parents do things out of love. Okay. I've heard it all.
Uh-huh.
Whatever weird shit you think you do with your food or your origin story, I have heard it all. Okay. I don't want to say that because every time I say I've heard it all, I hear something new and terrible. Okay. But I've heard a lot of stuff that people have gone
Uh-huh.
through terrible, terrible things.
Mm.
And why am I talking about this? I have no idea. I don't know why I went down this path. But my
Survival.
point is that from an anthropological perspective, somewhere in time, this may have been a survival skill, right? Like we said,
Mm-hmm.
eating everything on your plate was a survival skill. It just doesn't always apply anymore into the now. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's not wrong that we carry this. It's just the cycle breaker is the person who is basically standing in front of the train saying, no, I will not let you steamroll over the next generation either. And it's
Mm-hmm.
very hard to be that transitional person and say, you were doing the best you could, and I am also not going to do that to the next generation.
Ooh, so you're talking about kind of helping people become the cycle breaker.
Oh,
Oh.
yeah. Oh, yeah. When it comes to intergenerational trauma, yes, someone has to be the cycle breaker. And not even intergenerational trauma always. Sometimes it is just intergenerational behavior, let's say. Because if
Okay.
you think about what I said about the people who survived are
Mm-hmm.
the people who passed on their traits to us, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, let's say that there was something like, oh, let's use hangry. Let's just use hangry, right? Who survived to pass on their genes to us? The person who, when there wasn't enough food, they were like, oh, well, I guess I'll just sit here and starve. Or the person was
Mm-hmm.
like, can I swear? I don't want to swear.
Yeah,
Get
yeah,
the
yeah.
F out of my way. Like, I got to go find some food, right?
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah.
we're descended from the person who survived because they got crabby, right? And so we have that behavior, but can we be aware of it
Uh-huh.
when it happens instead of just like vomiting our crabbiness on everyone?
Yeah. Ooh, okay. I love the way that you just brought that up too, because one of the things that I've learned in my recovery journey is that I have to sometimes halt and question like why
Love
I'm doing
halt.
some things. Yeah, so it's what uh
Don't
uh
get too hungry,
yeah.
angry, lonely, or tired. And I had an
Yep.
S, stressed.
Ooh, so halts or salt. Salt. Yeah. And I mean, it's weird how our slightest mood change can really affect how we do things, how we act, what we decide to do. Because I know for some people, eating is a comfort. Some people also like I know myself, I've been there where it's like, oh, I just went through some big heavy emotional stuff, so I need a tub of ice cream, but I'm allergic to dairy, so it's both good and bad for me. um
Mhm.
but have you seen that some people's icebergs are also caused or the cause of food allergies? Like, do you deal with allergies in that
That's
sense?
interesting. I am not a food allergy expert, so I can't tell you what causes food allergies. What I can tell you is that everything may be connected and we just
Mm-hmm.
don't really have the answer. But I think that the wanting of a food
Uh-huh.
that will actually hurt you is really important because a healthy, happy, well-adjusted person, content, does not reach for a food that is going to hurt them or a substance. And
Mm-hmm.
the missing piece that I think a lot of people don't understand is that food is a mood altering chemical. And we
Ooh.
don't, I mean, hangry is the perfect example, right? I want a
Uh-huh.
divorce and then I eat lunch and I'm like, oh, I love my husband again, right? Food is a mood altering chemical and it's the
Yeah.
easiest one to get your hands on when you're a kid, right?
Uh-huh.
So I hope, but
Uh-huh.
I mean, you even get it, in utero, which again, I hope you weren't getting other mood altering substances in utero, but you might have been
Mm-hmm.
intergenerational trauma.
Yeah.
But the idea is that we reach for food for a good reason.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just lack of willpower or stupid or whatever we tell ourselves. If you're reaching for ice cream when you're sad, it's because there is a benefit to it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not congruent with how you want to live your life, which is not having diarrhea for an hour and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of piece that together. Is there a better way to change your mood, or is it a matter of accepting your mood and living through it? So what
Mm-hmm.
happened when you were a kid, usually, is where this stuff starts. You're in a bad mood, so someone offers you ice cream. Oh, let's go get some ice cream. That'll be a good treat. And so we
Mm-hmm.
learn when you're in a bad mood, you get ice cream. Or some people, it was like, you got all A's, let's go out for ice cream. And so you
Mm.
learn ice cream is only for when you're good. I mean, there's so many different ways we can all relate to ice cream, I think. My
Uh-huh.
ice cream origin story is that my dad grew up during the Depression. And
Mm-hmm.
when I would say there's an ice cream Baskin Robbins right around the corner from his watchmaking shop, and I would say, could I have $1 for ice cream? And he would say, same lecture every time. $1 for ice cream? We had to borrow 5 cents just to go see the doctor. And I'm sure he was in his way trying to say, wow, look what I've accomplished in my life. My kids don't even think $1 is anything.
Mm-hmm.
But what it came out as is, wow, you're quite a burden. You want
Mm.
$1 for ice cream. That's so frivolous. And so now we always have ice cream in my house. And every time we try a cheaper ice cream, I realize, like, no, we're not living in the depression here. We're either going to
Uh-huh.
have Bluebell ice cream or no ice cream. I'd rather have no ice cream.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't go out to get a $9 gelato every time, right? I can
Uh-huh.
get a half gallon of Bluebell for $9. But my point is, I'm not willing to shame myself for whatever the cost of ice cream is. Ice cream,
Mm.
if I can, I always say, don't take me to the fair and tell me I can't get a corny dog. Don't buy me ice cream and tell me I have to eat some ice cream that I don't like because it's cheaper, right? I'd
Uh,
rather not have ice cream. So it's that kind of stuff that just gets jumbled, bungled. I don't know what the right word is. Even if the parent is celebrating, I mean, I'm
mm-hmm.
just guessing that,
Yeah.
it was a positive thing for him, but it came out as like you're a burden as a kid for wanting ice cream. That's
Mm-hmm.
not that's not a healthy way to think about ice cream. Ice cream is just molecules, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's all the meaning that we put on it.
Uh, oof. Thank you for bringing that up because I had an episode not too long ago where I was like, I was really angry for some silly reason. I don't know why, but after I got some sugar in me, everything was better. And so I was like, okay, well, that's strange. And the first thing I thought of was like, oh, I was just really hungry, but it was like a little snack. And I was like, maybe my blood sugar was low or something. I
There
don't
is a
know.
dietitian I know whose signature line, you know how people sometimes put a quote in their signature line on their email? It says, happiness is a steady level of plasma glucose. It's like so nerdy, so awesome.
I mean, they've got a point there, because that would just solve a bunch of things, and well, not necessarily solve a bunch of things, but it is a a biological factor we do have to keep in
I
check.
do believe everyone thinks that Americans overeat. I think one of our huge problems is that we undereat because we're
Mhm.
all, not we, us personally, but like everyone's on a diet, or let's say
Mhm.
they, whoever the general they is, are on
Uh-huh.
a diet and then they're undereating. So then they overeat. It's a pendulum. It's not like
Mm.
overeating, 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 overeating. Maybe some people have that, but I think a lot of people are undereating to overeating, swing back,
Mhm.
undereating to overeating. I ate too much. I should eat less, and they
Mhm.
keep swinging back. And so that is, there's nothing steady about that experience.
Yeah. I mean, you bring up a good point, and I'm kind of sitting here thinking about my own eating habits because I hardly ever have breakfast. But then I'll sometimes have a lunch, and then whenever it comes to dinner time is where it's like, all right, I'll eat like two dinners, in a sense, but I'll also kind of snack throughout the day. And I know part of it was because whenever I was working like as an electrician, I didn't really have time for lunches, and like I would just get home and that's whenever I would get all the calories that I needed. And then the next day just ignore breakfast and then maybe have a lunch if that. And then I mean my alcoholism also didn't allow for a lot of food, but that was a whole nother situation. And nowadays it's very much a like for now my teeth are the reason I don't like eating a lot of stuff because they're just kind of falling apart. And it's like, oh well, I shouldn't have this because it's harder to chew or whatnot. But it's interesting because it's like I'm starting to wonder like am I actually eating enough because I've also always been on the leaner side, and so like I don't know if it's more genetics or just the way that I've kind of viewed myself because I always told myself growing up that I never wanted to be overweight, I never wanted to be fat. And so I don't know if part of that is like I'm going to watch what I eat, but I also know that physically I can't eat a lot either because I'm also allergic to a ton of foods. And who was it? I spoke to Melissa Hepner not too long ago, and she brought up the whole my eosinophilic esophagitis was probably caused by my self belief and self worth issues, and like so it was very interesting. I have a lot of food related stuff I didn't realize that I need to actually explore myself.
Well, yeah, I think you are like a lot of people who think that we're just making conscious choices about what to eat all day and not
Yeah.
realizing what kind of iceberg is under there. And
Uh-huh.
you've named several different things. So if you look back at the origins of dysfunctional eating behavior model, you've got biological dysfunctional eating. So that's related to your teeth. And then
Mhm.
you've got addiction related dysfunctional eating. So that's, if you were spending all your money on alcohol and didn't have enough for food or that kind of thing. And then you have stress and trauma related eating issues. And then you have your environmental and learned behavior, which was focused on your body size and appearance and weight, which we all grow up with. And so you actually have something from all of the categories.
Huh.
It's a
Oh.
lot to unravel.
That is. Oh man, I didn't realize I was going to give myself homework after this episode. Um, real quick, where can people find you if they're looking for some more of you?
Sure. So my umbrella website is jessicasetnick.com. That is
Okay.
where everyone can go to find everything about me, professional consultation, eating disorders boot camp, how to hire me to give a talk at your event, those kind of things. But Food Fairy Tales is the one you put up before. I actually
Mm-hmm.
changed the name of Food Fairy Tales to Healing Your Inner Eater. I'm going to send you a copy
Ooh.
of the Healing Your Inner Eater workbook after this
Okay.
so you can, go down that rabbit hole if you want to. And
Uh-huh.
anyone who's listening to this, if you go to Healing Your Inner Eater, that will tell you where, if there's any upcoming workshops that I'm doing. And you can we'll do a code, podcast code. Just put
Okay.
in podcast as a discount code, and that'll bring down the cost of the Healing Your Inner Eater workbook to $15.
Ooh, nice. Thank you for that. I much appreciate that. I know that the audience will as well. And I mean, I didn't realize that so much actually went on with eating food or the reason why we may or may not eat food the way we do. And I mean, that's one of those things is that a lot of people don't realize that eating disorders or the way that we do this kind of stuff, I think it's grossly underlooked, because whenever we talk about
Yeah.
addiction or traumas, we're looking at substance abuse disorders and so on and so forth.
But the
And
overlap between addictions and eating problems is huge. The overlap between trauma and eating issues is huge. We're
mhm,
we're all the same person. All this stuff happens inside the same person. And so lots of things are impacted.
yeah. Do you think that we kind of overlook food because it's a necessity for life?
I'm not sure overlook is quite the right word. I guess the way I think about it is that everyone's experience is different. You can't put people into a box very easily, so it takes a lot of work. It's a lot easier to judge. It's a lot easier to dump people in a box. It's a lot easier to look at someone's weight and think you can tell a lot of things about that person. So I think it's more like lazy medicine, honestly.
I've never heard that term, lazy medicine.
Well, there's something else, and this is like a topic for another day, but
Uh-huh.
our field of eating disorders, oh my gosh, this is not meant to be like an explosive bombshell, but the field of eating disorders, unfortunately, was
Uh-huh.
based on a misconception that underweight women with underweight women who don't eat enough is the eating disorder. Like anorexia was the only eating disorder for a long time, and it was
Huh.
skinny white adolescent girls, the end.
Wow.
And so
Huh.
the whole field is based on a stereotype. It's
Yeah.
not correct at all.
Huh.
But here's the thing. We know that women's experiences, women's pain, women's medicine, etc., has been left out of the Western medical culture.
Yep.
I mean, it's just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of the fact that eating disorders were miscategorized as a woman's illness in a culture that discounts women's illnesses,
Mm.
then that may be why we don't have a lot of information, why we don't think about it, why our medical profession doesn't give training in eating disorders, doesn't identify eating disorders until they're very severe. So I think it's more of a systemic issue than
Mm-hmm.
simply we as individuals don't think about food, because I think humans, especially in this diet culture, we do think about food a lot. It's
Mm-hmm.
just it's a bigger, broader issue than that.
Okay, thank you for bringing that up because you're right. Whenever I was doing some research not too long ago, it was one of those things to where it was like, oh, all the medication that has dosages and stuff. Whenever you look at like women, they were just like, oh, they're just like smaller weight men, so we're just going to give them a little bit less or just appropriate dosage based on weight. And it's like, no, the physiology is completely different.
Yes. And it
And
turns out that restrictive underweight eating disorder is a tiny percentage of
mm,
people with eating disorders. There are a lot of people with eating disorders who don't fit that stereotype. And yet, the whole model that we've for a long time was used for treatment was based on 6% of people. And there's
mm,
94% of people. There's men, there's transgender individuals, there's people from historically excluded groups in the research of eating disorders, specifically incarcerated population. There's a high rate of eating disorders, disabled population. There's so many features of eating issues that have never been explored. So how could we even teach about it? It's one of those things where I feel like we're all left to our own devices to eat, and with this message that it's all about willpower, it's all about knowing enough. If you think about the United States of America, we have more nutrition facts information on our food, on our packages, in our magazines, in our social media than anyone else in the world, and we are not even close to the healthiest. So all that
yeah.
information is not actually improving our eating.
That's a really good way to look at that. And I mean, you're right. And a lot of stuff that is acceptable over here in the US is actually banned over in like the UK, stuff like that, whenever it comes to snacks or sodas. And that's pretty telling right there. But we are getting close to the end of this episode. So I gotta
Okay.
ask, do
Yeah.
you think that we could see you on in the future to dive into more of like what we
Sure.
can do about this whole food and eating epidemic? Because I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, and I would love to hear your take on a bunch of different avenues because
Great.
if we're looking at like this little tiny part of a giant painting, I feel like we've just kind of brought in, like, we've taken a half step back from that painting, and we need to look at the different
We're
corners
the
of the painting.
penguin. We're the penguin on the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's so fascinating because if we don't realize that we're doing this to ourselves, we also don't realize that we're possibly sending messages to other people or even the ones underneath us.
Yes. Yes.
um, so real quick, are there any last words that you want to leave with the audience this afternoon? Because I
Sure.
mean, we've covered a lot of ground, and I'm sure some people will have a lot to chew on, no pun intended. But
Yes, I would just say if there's anything you're doing with your food and you're just disappointed in yourself or ashamed or feel like you're, doing it wrong, please, please, please reach out to someone or write it down. Anything that will help you get it out of your head, because I believe that shame is a killer. And if you blame yourself for your situation, then you have to sort of punish yourself. I mean, it's just not fair. Know that there are a lot of things set in motion before you even were born. There are things that are set in motion from a level that we can't actually even comprehend, probably. And it's okay. It's okay to reach out if anyone wants help finding an eating disorder dietitian, even if you don't identify as having an eating disorder. I do think eating disorder dietitians, we are really good at kind of separating what is about food and what isn't about food. Could really help you with that. So please reach out to me if you want to, and I'll help you find someone in your area.
no, man, thank you for that, and thank you for that reminder that shame is a killer because it really is. I didn't realize that shame was driving a lot of my addiction, and I mean, I can't imagine what shame does to a lot of other people if it could do what it did to me. So I think that that's something that we could all tackle as a society is just become
Yeah.
a, not shaming ourselves because
Yeah.
that is big. But Jessica, it has been an absolute honor and a pleasure speaking to you and
Oh,
learning
thanks.
all about this. And I'm excited for our next episode because,
Great.
like I said, after I do my own little iceberg digging, I'm sure I'll have a lot more questions.
Okay, great. I look forward to it.
Awesome. Well, everyone out there, thank you for listening to Guidance in Recovery on WDJY 99.1 FM. And as always, try to love yourself, love others if you can, but you got to try to love yourself first. Be your favorite version of yourself today if you can. And if you're having a mental health crisis, you can call 988 or text 741 if you don't want to pick up the phone. And I think that's it. This has been Jessica. This has been Keegan, and we'll see y'all in the next episode. Until then, much love. Schlan.